This is a completely new industry that caught a lot of people by surprise, right? In fact, I'm going to start with one first question for Dave Lafferty. Dave, you are a really good industry representative. Has this caught industry unprepared? Is the industry prepared for all these drone issues?
Bit of a background. Previously, I was with the Chief Technology Office with BP, and my job was to I was sort of the internal advisor to the Alaska business unit for new technology. So a lot of the drone stuff and Kurt Smith and all that was part of it. So we sort of saw that coming a long time ago and struggled with a lot of the sort of the internal safety issues that there's a lot of scary stories I can tell you. But yeah, I think if you look at the Gardner hype curve, drones are probably at the top of the hype. And I really love Todd's. It's not about the drones. It's about the data. And you really have to consider the mission and the post-mission processing of that data, because if it's acquired wrong, if you don't save some of the metadata, then you might not really be able to reach the final objectives of things like inspections and things like that. So I think the biggest thing that's caught the industry off guard now is sort of the hype around maybe the consumer drones and things like that. And we have to sort of step back and sort of say, what are the mission objectives here? And can the payload and can the platform that I need, and I'll give you an example, post-Horizon spill, we were looking at platforms to determine where oil sheens were. And we determined that, in fact, time on station, that a balloon tethered to a boat made more sense than a drone. So again, I would consider drones as part of a bigger package, because that same package can be deployed by a number of platforms.
All right, we're ready to take questions. Dick Solansky in the front row. Wait a minute, get the microphone.
It's coming.
It's coming your way.
I realize the focus here has been primarily on industry, commercial applications, and societal applications in general, and this is kind of what we're talking about. But I think it begs the question, perhaps, we all know that the military, and I want to bring that aspect of it into, has been doing this for a long time, unmanned vehicles, the ancillary technology around it and everything, and basically, historically, military, especially in aerospace and other areas, has let we eventually get that advanced technology into the commercial side of the house. Obviously, there's a lot of classified stuff going on out there that we probably know is happening. Where do you think, given this historical trickle down, if you will, or trade-off between military technologies that eventually gets out to commercial applications, where do you think we are at this stage, and where could we go in the future in terms of how fast and do you think that kind of technology is going to make it out into the commercial and into the industries that use it?
Just a couple answers on that from my regulatory side a little bit is about a year ago, FAA had some leadership changes at the level of where they're doing UAS regulations, and they opened up to us in research to allow us to dig into DoD methodologies, classified systems, and use that stuff. Before they were like, no, we don't want to crash them like the military does. Well, eventually there's an acknowledgement that there's much, much more. In the sensor technologies, I think it's huge, although you have to convert it from typically human type applications that we use in DoD to more whatever the specific technology or mission that you're trying to capture on the corporate or public utility side. So agriculture, some of the sensitivities of the sensors are fantastic, different wavelengths. They can do a lot with those systems. We just got to modify them from identifying humans and things like that towards that.
Next question. Any questions?
Yeah, Patrick Moore with ExxonMobil. So, since you said it's all about the data and all about the sensors, where do we, where's an easy way to go to find out what sensors are available, what that you can use? Because we have ideas on some applications, but it's just a matter of knowing what sensors that we can do to be able to go and deploy it. So, like you said, the drone part is, we understand that the vehicle, but it's all around, like I said, the sensing technology and the data that you can get from it. And so, looking for any place where we can go to look to help. Is there a consolidated area or
I don't know if this will help you, but we get those questions from our business units, all over the world, and I've just started within Oceaneering creating a list of sensor packages that our approved operators carry, and that's there's value. Obviously, that's a dynamic list, and some of our applications might be different than yours, but it's just, for me, it was just going out there. You're seeing what's challenging about your question. You're seeing the same application, maybe a close visual inspection of an asset, and you're seeing two completely different procedures to use those sensors. Whereas one company might just do video, and then if there's any crucial areas, then go back in with a high resolution camera, and then another company just uses strictly that high resolution camera for shots. So even for very similar companies doing the same job, we're seeing different sensor packages. So I think we could talk offline. I'd be happy to know more about your applications, but I think that's probably one of the best ways. There's a lot of research going on, and just reaching out to some of those companies is saying, hey, what do you find works best for the application you're looking for, and then just start asking around in that vertical there.
Industrial grade groups like NACE for corrosion is a good place to start. Looking for LiDAR, the SPAR group is a good place to start. So a lot of those organizations, and again, it depends on the technology. It's sort of the end thing that you're after. If it's mapping, then SPAR is a good place to start. If it's corrosion inspection, then NACE would be a good place to start.
And if I could, just one thing I'd like to add is, if the way I envision this and I see it happening is, as a student of history, we're kind of in the Wild West of early aviation. Things are changing so quickly, method of operation, different mission sets. That's where companies really got to take stock, and do you risk it because you have a special mission area that you want to develop a capability and bring that first to market, or do you reach out to services like Oceaneering, like our research group, and help you get started down a path, and then you can decide when you want to jump off that kind of consultancy path.
That's a great point. The ROVs we have a lot of lessons learned in that technology and using that platform, where the platform could be transportable to the drones. And I would look very hard at the things we've done right and things we've done wrong with the ROVs as a good start too, because a lot of the missions are basically the same.
Stefan Götzgen from SAP. Rick, I think you mentioned at the beginning a number. I think it was $127 billion for the drones market in 2020. Is it just hardware and software, or does it comprise also the whole services and use cases, what you can build around the drones business?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that some estimates of market size were in the $1 billion range. That's probably more associated with just the airframe type of things. And the 127 billion is my guess. We haven't really researched in detail all of the summary. It's an incredibly hard market to survey. All right, but that would have included the mission control, the flight planning, and the data analysis. There's companies like Bentley and all these other companies that are trying to develop software packages to evaluate that to evaluate that data. You know, I would focus though on agricultural applications. Seem to be one of the big applications for drones and for data analysis over farming applications. Certainly seems to be one of the big growth areas. Yes.
And I believe that 127 billion came from a PricewaterhouseCoopers study that was recently released, because I saw that same number, but it did include all the different service applications, inspection, agriculture, construction.
I'm not convinced the market's going to necessarily grow, but it'll be displaced. So rather than manual inspections, those same dollars then will move into automated inspections. So if you want to get a size of a market, sort of say, what are you spending today? And there's a good chance that they'll simply redirect those funds into other methods to achieve the same thing.
All right, let me see. We still have a little bit of time left. So we all know everything about drones. I have probably one or two more questions I have. Let me check. All right. This is kind of a question for one of our two pilots. I heard that NASA was involved in helping to develop a new flight control system. Could you briefly explain what are the problems with flight control regulations that the FAA has for manned vehicles that don't apply to drones?
Okay, I'm more on the, are you talking flight control actually flying, or are you talking more UTM, which is UAS traffic management?
I think there was this ADS-B,
Yep,
system
okay, yep.
for recognizing where drones are in space.
So that system being developed by NASA has a lot of industry involved, the shore is involved to help out, and the FAA has given some blessing towards, it's called UAS, Unmanned Aircraft Systems Traffic Management, UTM. And UTM, the way the world, the FAA looks at this is initially, they're going to segregate what they call controlled airspace, not normal controlled airspace, but it can be it's where air traffic controllers work, and segregate that airspace from air traffic control having to talk. And in that space, there's going to be agreements to enter into that airspace. You need certain equipage, just like the FAA does. And the ability to go into this NASA UTM system to segregate where they can put in geofences, so you can segregate, they can put in mission areas, they can put in shared areas, depending on the actual equipage. What's unique to UTM is on top of that, there's a services layer to include weather, to include offboarding your data, to dealing with an emergency. Whatever the different services are that are going to stack in there, you think of an urban terrain, the urban weather is quite complex as you get eddies and wind flows around different buildings and traffic management through the streets, as we mentioned a situation earlier. And those services really become the apps that you have on your cell phone. And the best services in the end will win. That's who everybody will apply for. So you're going to pay to be, in the concept, you're going to pay to be a part of the UTM system, to get into it and work and be deconflicted. PK out of NASA, who's the father of this thing, really believes that in the long haul, maybe 20 years from now, this is where the FAA will go, because just think in terms of how we're bringing in ADS-B now and new radars, how difficult the FAA has in any government purchase of a system. It takes about 10 to 20 years, and that does not work with technology. But you look at your apps on your phone, or even your phones themselves with some hardware, they can change rapidly, and people and companies will migrate to this new technology, this new service as it goes. The FAA, like I said, is on board initially as segregated. There'll There's some communications now that we're working out with air traffic control, how they'll share, so that when something pops out of the UTM environment to be handled by air traffic control, it happens, or emergency occurs, and then vice versa. If they're flowing air traffic through or near one of these segregated airspace, they will be able to deal with it. Phase 2 of that will then be integrated airspace. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. Basically, it's a pretty complicated system, you know, and also I think it's not just kind of FAA, it's the, you know, the European space, you know, this is an international problem.
So remember we talked about it's the data? This one is a place where money and industry can engage and be ready to make some money, because everybody's involved in it. It agrees that this is a way we need to go towards regulation and managing air traffic, at least initially for the smaller UAVs. But in the long haul, there's money to be made. And like you said, it's worldwide, it's international, and the standards are being developed right now that everybody will compete against.
Any more questions? I've got one more question. When can I call up Amazon and have you deliver my prescription, or when can I get a Pizza Hut pizza delivered to my house? Any guesses, projections? I'm thinking it's not next year.
So just to give you a little bit insider trading, I was briefed a slide last week, still not releasable, and I don't have all the data numbers in my head. But the FAA's next step is beyond visual line of sight, which is necessary, and the rulemaking was just pulled back in the interagency approval process because, and as I don't want to get ahead of Administrator Herta, but the concerns were, we don't know if that drone is friendly or not. But that's the next stage, along with flight over people. So flight over people actually was the regulation they pulled back. That needs to get resolved. That's some of the counter UAS. That's probably a year or two till we can get to that stage. Then we'll have to move to the beyond visual line of sight. That's approximately a year, maybe two. And then finally, this UTM system, although it's really moving fast conceptually, we will need industry to build upon it with all these new regulations. So it's probably at least 5 years, my guess would be.
I think you'll see an autonomous car deliver that long before you'll see an autonomous aircraft.
But, well, keep in mind, those aircrafts can avoid over and above. Cars, you know, got to go side to side. But so there are some interesting advantages, because this is a brand new infrastructure that doesn't exist, where we already have these roads and rules. But in any event, I'd like to ask for a round of applause for our speakers, and thank you.